Let me just argue right away. There's no such thing as toxic masculinity. There's masculinity, and then there's toxic. Right. There's toxic people, there's toxic situations, but there is no such thing as calling masculinity toxic, because if it's toxic, it's not masculinity.
Right.
Masculinity is not toxic. That's a self-defeating statement. And yet you hear it on media. You hear it said. People get on the news and toxic masculinity, toxic masculinity, toxic masculinity. And I think this is just my opening here, and I'm going to hear everybody introduce themselves. I think the truth is, as men, we got to take responsibility.
Absolutely.
For where the world is at. And so I thought about it. I go, you know what? The problem isn't that there's toxic masculinity. The problem is there's a toxic lack of masculinity. Which produces topics like this. So that's the title. That's what we're going to be talking about on the M&M show. Toxic lack of masculinity right there. But I want to introduce everyone to the show. First of all, great friend of mine. Maybe we can start with you, Jamie. Maybe tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Okay. So my name is Jamie. I am from the Isle of Wight on the south coast. I'll be 55 this year. And I have an incredible wife, 3 amazing children. And I was very lucky to have a change of lifestyle. Just over 10 years ago, I was living in South America in Ecuador. I went out there on a spiritual journey to find myself. It was at the end of the Mayan calendar in 2012 when I went out there. And when I went out there to find some deep revelation from the South American spirit, I actually found the answers to all life's problems in the Bible. I went out there as an alcoholic, a drug addict. I came back to London, was looking for a church that was practicing what the Bible teaches. I found one here, met my wife, inherited 2 incredible children, and had my first daughter at the age of 48. So I was late to the game, being a father, but I'm loving every minute. It's definitely a young man's game, but I'm very close.
You look amazing. So thank you for that introduction, and good on you for that new little baby right there. And for stepping in and taking care of those others. It's amazing. Okay, let's keep going.
Yes, hi, my name is Ola. I am, where do I start? My story started in Nigeria.
You Ola or Denzel Washington? You look like Denzel. Tell us about that too.
I would take that, man. But no, my story started in Nigeria. And so it was myself and my mom. I grew up there. We moved to England. I think I was about 11, 12 years old. Met my dad for the first time, who coincidentally, his name's Michael, who coincidentally kind of looks like a particular Michael on this table. I'm not going to mention who. There are 2 Michaels on this table, so I'm going to leave everyone to figure that one out. But met my dad, grew up here, met my half-brother. It was great. Grew up to become an actor, so I'm an actor. I do TV and film and voiceovers and stuff like that. And
okay, now with that, can I tell anybody watching the show what show to go see you on?
Did a show on Amazon called Riches.
Go check out Riches, and make sure you subscribe to the M&M show.
Please. Please.
Like, share, subscribe. Like, share, subscribe. Like, share, subscribe. Sorry, go ahead.
Like, share, subscribe. Like, share, subscribe. But no,
So Riches, okay.
Yeah, I got into film, got into TV. Got to go to drama school with a scholarship, actually. Like, I didn't have to pay for anything. And if you know anything about African parents, when you tell them that you want to be an actor, they tell you that's only recreational. You don't become an actor for your career.
That after the meeting or before the meeting?
That's during the meeting. But when I told my mom, hey, I don't have to pay the 15 grand.
Sure.
And I'm going to get 400 pounds every 3 months for going into school. She was like, yes, my son. Wow, you're going to be graduated, did all of that. I've been going to church all my life. I was actually a youth pastor at a church at some point. But something was always missing. Something was always missing. I thought I was going to find it through acting. Funny enough, in a weird way, God actually used acting to help me find what I was missing, which was true friends, true brothers, true sisters. Found them in July 2022. Brothers from a church that I just stepped into, and I was like, what is going on here? The men love to be men. The women love to be women. They care about each other. They actually want to take you out to lunch and just get to know you. And that changed my life, and that's changed a lot of my life. I'm married to who is easily the most beautiful woman I have ever laid my eyes on in my life. I get to see this woman every day, and it is better than any Oscar that I could ever dream about.
It's not an act.
It is not an act. This is real life, you know. But yeah, this is me. I did a voiceover recently for Vinted as well. So if anyone knows, and I'm privileged to be. I've watched the Eminem show quite a lot. Nice. So I'm actually privileged to be here.
Great to have you. Very much. Okay, now I know a little bit about this man here who's going to be reporting to the CEO of Apple. But maybe you can tell us briefly about yourself.
Yes, so my name is Aaron. I grew up in the small, now city actually, as of 2022, city of Gibraltar. For those of you that don't know, yeah, it became a city. So what happened was, they applied for it like 400 years ago. It wasn't even that.
As an African-American man, I can understand the struggle. 400 years struggle before we could... No, I'm joking. Go ahead.
So as far as I know, they just kind of forgot that they had applied for it 400 years ago. Wow. They reapplied recently, and when they found out, oh, you actually applied for this a while ago, they're like, okay, we'll give it to you. Seriously? So now it's actually officially a city. Which I don't know if it actually helps to explain what it is. I kind of have to be like, well, it's kind of like in the UK, but not in the UK, and it's the bottom of Spain, and people are like, But that's where I'm from. Grew up there, and incredible family, super grateful. I went to university. I'm a huge tech geek. I love technology. And so one of my biggest dreams in life was to work for a big tech company. My favorite being Apple, so I'm very proud that you're actually using a laptop. Nice. That's awesome. And in university, I really went after my career there. Ended up getting an internship, actually getting an offer there to work as a software engineer.
For Android?
No. Oh, no, we don't talk about the A word.
Okay.
But that was great. I worked there for a while. And then during this time, I was really exploring like spirituality, reading books like Eckhart Tolle's Power of Now, just kind of like not really sure what I believed. I grew up in a Christian family, but I like kind of like all that. I didn't feel like I really connected growing up. But this crazy thing happened where one day I went into the gym, which is great because it's a very manly thing. I love to talk about masculinity. Right. And I met someone, his name is...
You met a woman?
No, I met a man. I met a man's man. And actually what struck me about...
Calluses, square jaw.
This guy was...
A little bit ugly, you know? Yeah.
He was strong, and I'm like... And he's like, you know, we should train together sometime. I'm like, yeah, let's train together. Show me. So he didn't just show me how to physically train, but how to spiritually train too. He was a huge influence. Nice. You know, helped study the Bible with me, and that was incredible. It just changed my life in so many ways. So much so that then a year and a half after that, I actually left my job. Now I get to do what I did at Apple, but to help in a spiritual way with people's lives, helping advance God's mission, and that's awesome.
Come on, bro.
Well said. Okay, we got a few more. Well, we've got this man that's sitting next to me. Give me a brief intro. Tell people who you are on for the show.
Yeah, my name's Kane. I used to be a classically trained singer. I was an actor.
Are you still a classically trained?
I suppose I still am. Still trained and singing.
Were you the #1 TikToker or something like that?
I was one of the first TikTokers to bring a certain trend, which is now very popular around the world, into Europe, which was kind of playing along with languages and accents and all of that kind of stuff.
How many languages do you speak?
I think if you actually sent me to the countries, I think I'd say 5 languages. Okay. But I mean, in and out of that, I was able to make videos over the space of 2 years in over 200 languages. Now, do I speak those? Of course not. Wow. You know, with a lot of practice and really taking, you know, a lot of takes and trying to make sure everyone's happy and make sure I'm not offending anyone with my pronunciation. yeah, that's kind of what I did for a while.
You can tell us all the languages that we need to have to speak to our wives who speak different languages.
Yes, I'm not fluent in any of the love languages just yet, but I'm learning.
We're all. I want to learn woman.
Yeah, I'm learning about quality time,
right?
Exercise. But yeah, I was also an actor, so I did a few concerts and a few things on the West End and around Europe.
Beautiful.
And in between traveling, I was living in Birmingham, not Birmingham, Alabama, but Birmingham, UK. And it was great. That's actually where God found me.
Okay.
So I believed in Jesus. I would pray. Maybe if I had an exam or if I hurt my knee, falling over.
Kind of the using God deal.
Right. But then if my knee healed or I passed the exam, I would forget about God completely.
Right.
You know, and say, hey, I can't believe I did this. You know. But a guy from the Turks and Caicos Islands reached out to me one day and said, hey man, want to talk about God?
Hey, is that an American?
Yeah, kind of like it's Caribbean. He sounds, hey man, sounds like he's from Miami.
How he sounds? Hey man, hey.
That's him. And I said, no, I don't want to speak about that.
Oh wow.
Because I was wearing my cross that day. I think I'd prayed. I was feeling religious. I don't need to speak about God. Why do we got to speak about God? I'm trying to go to work. Let me do my thing, make some money. But he was persistent. He took my Instagram. We had a 7-month-long back and forth, him inviting me out every week, me saying, I'll be there, and then not turning up to any of the kind of events that he invited me to. After 7 months, I said, let's get a coffee, because I wanted him to stop speaking to me. I thought, okay, if we sit down once and for all, him, just tell me everything, and then I'm leaving. But it was one of the best coffees of my life.
And so where are you at now?
So now I'm a Christian.
You did it.
Now I'm a Christian. Yeah, I studied the Bible with him for about a week and a half.
Great.
Wow. First time I went to the church that I'm now part of was about 3 days in, and that's actually the first time I met you.
Okay.
Down in we had a church service in Regent's University, and I was very impacted. Everyone was smiling. I thought, this is weird. But decided to join.
And here we are.
And a couple of years later, I now work full time.
Yes, so I'm Harry. I'm born and raised in Dublin.
Yes.
But I'm also Nigerian as well. And I'm a 5th-year medical student in London at the moment.
Had to have somebody smart on the show, guys.
And my journey to God has been very interesting because I grew up in a very religious household. And going to boarding school as well, where we had like Protestant influences, where we'd sing hymns every day. I was just like, there's something really missing here. But I really connected emotionally, but my life wasn't really changing. And when I moved here and I started my medical degree, my best friend actually died from colon cancer on my first day. And I was just like, okay, the solution to this is to delve deeper into medicine. I wanted medicine to be my everything. And while I was studying for exams, I actually meet someone and he invites me out to church. And I was like, okay, he seems very nice. This is a bit awkward. And he keeps messaging me and I basically just read his messages. But it turns out he reached out to another friend of my course as well. And he comes out to church and I go with him. And I'm just completely blown away by the sincerity and the honesty. Because, and it's so interesting that we're talking about masculinity. I think a part of me was actually ashamed of being a man. Because I think I had a toxic perception of what being a man was. Right? To the point
I like that. A toxic perception.
Right.
Of what being a man is.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's a show.
Yeah.
That is the show.
Right.
A toxic perception of what it means to be a man. That can be said about men and women.
Right.
Because there are certain men that have produced the reason we're doing this show.
Right.
And then there are certain women that don't understand that there's no such thing as tough. But anyway,
No, absolutely. And I think, especially who I was before I became a Christian, I think this show is for someone like that. Because I was even confused about my sexuality at a certain point, just because of false conceptions of that. And I had real men come into my life and help me confront very difficult truths. And that made me appreciate, one, who God was trying to call me to be, and who I can help other men be as well, to basically lead them to God and have a correct view of who they're meant to be. So I'm very grateful for being here, and it takes me back memory lane, and I'm just grateful to be surrounded by you all.
Oh, so great to have you. And I like that. Yeah, we've had a few that have had that background, and I would simply just say attraction doesn't have to be action.
Right.
And you don't have to act on everything.
Right.
It's great to have you on the show. We'll round off with the man with the mane down there.
My name is Michael, and I am a videographer, so I studied journalism at university. Grown up an atheist my whole life, became a Christian in 2017. And to be honest, I really resonate with what we're going to be speaking about today, because I think a big part of, most men's life, but my life was trying to figure out how to be a man. What does it look like to be a man? And you look at all these archetypal figures of men, and you think that's what it looks like to be a man, and you start chasing after all those things. And I was similar to that, like, being a man is taking drugs, being a man is getting drunk, being a man is having different women in your life. But after doing those things, I can resonate. It doesn't resonate with who I feel like I am inside, who I am as an individual. But surely there's an answer out there, and that's what got me onto the path of start reading the Bible and looking for answers and trying to figure out what is truth, where is it truly to be a man. And then 2017, funny enough, this guy spoke to me. This guy tapped me on the shoulder. I was on my way to a nightclub called The World's End. So I'm on my way.
On your way to a nightclub called The World's End to find all the other men.
Wow! Oh my God!
You dying too? You going?
That's when Jimmy tapped me on the shoulder, and then he just was really kind of a guiding light of a real example of a man who's not trying to please other men, but he's trying to please the one who's made the men. And following that was been a big change in my life. So that was 7 years ago, as of the 26th of August. So just a week ago.
Wow. Congrats. Come on, Michael. Thank you. Okay, well, guys, thank you so much for being on the show. Got a diverse panel here. We've got a little bit of it all. We've got a little ebony, a little ivory, a little more. I'm probably double ebony. And, maybe Michael, you're a little bit more ivory. But we are all living in man harmony. There we go. Yes. And I've just got to, you start looking at these topics. You start looking at, I feel a lot about this, like what you said. Just to be honest with the show and the viewers. Never knew who my father was. Abandoned at the age of 14. Had male role models from here and there, but I really struggled with the topic today. Being a man, doing behaviors that would be deemed as toxic masculinity today. And so I think this show means a lot. So I dug into it. I go, okay, well, who in the world, where did this term come from? Surely it's got to be all the feminists that hate men out there. Surely it's all the angry women. They're so mad at men. They just come up with this term, and I found out that it didn't come from feminism.
Oh, okay.
There's influence in feminism of the term, but it didn't come. It actually came from a gentleman by the name of Shepherd Bliss.
Okay.
Yes, Shepherd Bliss. And he's same-sex attracted. I heard the name. I go, okay, that's an interesting name right there, Shepherd Bliss. And then it made me go, wow, here you have another man who has same-sex attraction. That's his choice. He decides to do that, telling us what it means to be a man. And that it is toxic. And when you read, you look into the history of the word, you find out that he was a psychology professor in California. Wow. He writes this periodical in 1987. This is when the gender roles are kind of getting mixed around. Women were kind of like entering the workforce a lot more. And so they were trying to kind of appease women. And so he writes this paper going, hey, there's aspects of men nowadays that are just wrong. And so he writes this paper. He gets some of it, and I'm not trying to be funny here. He gets some of his information from fairy tales. Okay. No pun intended there. Wow. Fairy tales. And he adds that with a bit of mythology, and he comes up with this term myopoetic. Like men need to be myopoetic. And the ones that we have nowadays are toxic. There are aspects of being a man that are toxic. That's the genesis of the phrase. It's attributed to him. There's another gentleman that it's kind of attributed to, and the term is kind of played around. But how has it affected you guys, this term toxic masculinity, and how does it affect you to know that it came from someone who really struggled with his identity, struggled with masculinity to begin with?
Right.
I think people want to identify a problem. You know, I think there's a crisis in society at the moment.
Lack of men.
It's serious. I think that, you know, we can laugh and joke about the use of words, but when we're not fulfilling our purpose, when children are growing up in a society where true masculinity is viewed as, or is not available to be seen, it's not around to be seen, then there are generation after generation are growing up in Western society, getting further and further away from the truth, further and further away from who they really are, more and more confused. Moral standards are dropping further and further, and people are trying to identify the reason why it is. And I think toxic masculinity is just one of the things that it seems like, oh, maybe that's the problem, maybe that's the issue.
Right.
That there are masculine traits that have that
caused the world to be what it is.
Right.
Yeah. So this is kind of more. So what you're saying more or less is it's the fruit. It's not the root. So it's the fruit of where we are as a society. It's not the root. There's nothing wrong with being a man. Right. And for those of you that are viewing, again, the title of today's show, it's the toxic lack of masculinity. we really are striving our best to be examples, to be men that you could go, okay, that's the kind of man I want to be, or at least aspire to be, or at least aspire to ask a question. But how has it affected, no particular order, how has it?
I think I love that. Even regardless of like where it comes from, right? You always know that there's something wrong with this phrase. There's something not quite right with, because it paints masculinity. It tells you as a young man growing up that you can't be masculine because masculinity is toxic, or parts of your nature is toxic, and then it throws you off as a kid, like trying to grow up, trying to like realize, well, what am I supposed to do? Who am I supposed to be? Okay, now you've identified this problem that I didn't know I had, but apparently I've got this problem. You just identify this problem, tell me what the solution is. So now that you've identified a problem for me, now you can help me to think in a way that you actually want me to think, right? You pointed out something wrong with me. And I think this influences is not a thing that's just happened in this 21st century. It's not a thing that's just happened like right now in the last few years with Twitter and TikTok and stuff like that. I think everybody wants to be an influencer, and he wanted to be an influencer. He saw something changing in society, and he's like, okay, I need to put a stamp of myself in here, no matter who it hurts. And I think that, in a weird way, that is a toxic trait.
See, this is very powerful.
That's the toxic trait.
That's very clever. Very well said. Where there's a vacuum, something's going to fill it.
100%.
And you nailed it. You know, there was a vacuum. There's these gender, and let's fill it. You know, and he filled it with a statement that is very, very, very dangerous, if not explained. And people don't understand that you can't be. You know, what is the moral backdrop you're measuring things if you're going to call masculinity toxic? What is it? Are you comparing this to the internet? Are you comparing it to something more moral than masculinity or humankind? That's why I love the Bible, because the Bible says that sin is something you perform, not your personality. We are not our sin. So whatever makes us toxic doesn't mean that's who we are.
Agreed.
We are men outside of our weaknesses. We are women, if we were, outside of our weaknesses. So I really appreciate it. He was an influencer, and that really, you kind of identified that. How's it?
Well, as an influencer. I think this is one of the things that was most scary when I was influencing full time, because it's your job to influence people. But when you start to influence them in a way that they might not want to be influenced, you can kind of just lose that job and that career altogether. If I was on a live stream and I'm too masculine, I get cancelled. If I'm making a video and I'm too feminine, I get cancelled. And so where do you find that background? And I think whilst I was doing it, a lot of the time I was doing it without the Bible, unfortunately. I hadn't become a Christian yet. So I had no moral backdrop, as you said, to kind of base that off. And I had to see, hey, did the audience like this? Okay, I guess this is who I am. Oh, they like this today? Okay, I guess this is who I am. So I had no idea what being a man really was, other than how what I did was received by the people I was kind of influencing.
So this is huge. And for the viewers out there, we could spend all day. I'm sure everyone has some thoughts about what masculinity is. What I've learned the hard way, the scar tissue method way, is that if you're going to call yourself a man, you got to have some emotional control.
100%.
You can't be more emotional than women. Women are pretty emotional, and if you're more emotional than women, then we got a problem. And I learned growing up, you lose your cool, you lose respect.
100%.
And I think there are a lot of people out there that are filling voids. You got the Andrew Tates that tap into something.
I was just about to say,
And there's part of me that goes, no.
Yeah, exactly. You know what I mean?
Yes.
No. You know, I just want to say yes, but I have to. I was like, I have to throw a little bit here. And, you know, being emotionally out of control. I don't, you know, you don't want to exude the Kanye West, Taylor Swift energy, if you will. I don't know if you know that little moment. He got all emotional. Chris Brown, Rihanna, for the 90s people out there, Mike Tyson, Robin Gibbons, I think. And if you're a single, over texting to the point of showing that you're overwhelmingly available at all times. Don't you have a life? Don't do that.
Be interesting.
Don't want the sister knowing that you just have nothing to do. Text her. Find out how she's doing.
Be busy, man.
Please. Hiding from you.
What are you up to today?
I think emotional control as men is huge.